Howdy, folks. This is Hookwork, episode 11, and we're going to get right to it. We're bringing a friend in for episode 11, just like we did episode 10. And Z, one of the things that I would love to talk to you about is the baby Z2. I added it to my arsenal a couple years ago. It's one of those things in a tournament. I fished a tournament this weekend. I was generating bites. They stopped. I put on a baby Z2. I started drop shotting it, siren color, and it honestly, it changed the outcome of the tournament. It went from embarrassing to where I could look at my fellow competitors again. So before we get into the hook selection, the baby Z2, let's talk a little bit about it.
Man, Eric, it actually, to get in the story with Striking made many years ago, and I'm talking like, Eric, dude, I'm talking like 22, 24 years ago. They got their hands on the Elastic technology. Look, I got a siren. Ironically, it's that time of year. Siren baby Z2. What's interesting about the story of this bait? So 24 years ago, they were selling a Z2, a 5-inch big Z2, and all of us smallmouth Great Lakes nut bags. We kept it really quiet. So then I started taping shows, 21 years ago, and somebody at Strike King, his name was Phil Marks, he's passed, but Phil was an icon in the industry. And one day he's in my boat and he says, "My gosh, dude, how many bags of Z2s do you have?" And I said, "There's 100. There's always 100 Z2s in the boat when I'm smallmouth fishing." And he said, "Well, that's good because we're going to get rid of it." And I said, whoa. I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Ain't nobody uses those things." And I said, "Oh, there's a select few that do." And he's like, "Well, you need to start doing some shows on that." So we start talking. Literally, we're in the boat and we're talking, and we start catching them on a big Z2. And he said, "Do you want more colors?" And I said, "No, dude. I want different sizes." And that's when they came out with the baby Z2. And it's ironic that if we would not have gone on that fishing trip together, Striking probably would have got rid of the big Z2. There would never be a baby Z2. So the baby Z2 kind of came exactly. Yeah, I have other words for it. Thank goodness we went fishing. So what was funny was they came out with the baby Z2, and this is long before forward-facing sonar, right? Mm-hmm. But this is 5 years before forward-facing sonar. And the great thing about it is whether you're drop shotting it on a 180, right? Mm-hmm. Drop shotting it on a 180 or a Pro V drop shot hook. That's initially how I started fishing it. Basically, it was on a drop shot, just like you said you fished your tournament last week. Mm-hmm. So this is, and by the way, let me tell you a quick story, but this has nothing to do about nothing. But the siren color was me. Yeah. I used to throw real chartreuse laminate tubes, and I asked them to make that baby Z2 in siren, and I'll never forget this. There's a guy, do you know the name Ronnie Manrose from Bass Pro Shops? He's moved on, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. I took Ronnie Manrose on a smallmouth trip, and he said, "Well, there ain't nobody ever going to buy a siren color baby Z2." So this is 8 or 9 years ago, and it's gone on to be one of probably the best smallmouth bed fishing baits since then. So what? It was always a drop shot. It was always on a drop shot and stuff like that. And then it was I'm going to say it was about 2 years before the pandemic. I was out on the boat with my kids, really early season, and they didn't bring any of their regular Ned rig baits. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I got a little Ned rig right here, and they got all their stuff ready, and the water's cold, man. It's 38 to 41 degrees, and they can't find their little Ocho turd looking stuff. and I'm throwing a silver buddy and I'm catching them, but they're locked in, and they do, in really really cold weather in the north, they bite a Ned rig good. And I said, pull a baby Z2 out and just put it on there. And Eric, as God is my witness, I'll never forget this. They go on that day to crush them. I don't have it rigged perfectly straight because I've been tearing it. They creamed them on a baby Z2 on a Ned head. And a quick story about that. So if you show that right there, cast after cast, like they're out fishing a silver buddy, they're out fishing a coffee tube, and I'm like, all right, there's obviously more power to a baby Z2 than just a drop shot.
Yeah.
So it was funny. I told Van Dam, he was headed up north. That's a terrible name drop, but I told him, I said, hey, if you get up north and that water's cold, I said, put a baby Z2 on a Ned head. And all of a sudden, he shoots like 10 videos with it. And I was like, whoa, I was the one that told you. I was the one that told you. And that's where you started to see that there was versatility. Then all of a sudden, forward-facing sonar comes along. And I was already catching them, actually, ironically, with Ryan McCullough. Mm-hmm. I was catching them rigged just like this with a TK 180. Just threaded on there, no weight, real light line, 6-pound line to a 5 or an 8-pound braid to where you can launch it on schooling fish. And then you fast forward a year or two to the world we live in now, to a jighead minnow. That's the history of a baby Z2. But what I've really learned about a baby Z2, and this, I look at a lot of your content, a lot of the stuff that you put up. You're the only human being that I think fishes more than I do. It is a bite getter for all of our finesse applications, whether you're going to drop shot it, whether you're just going to throw it weightless, or on a jighead minnow. It's a bite getter, but it catches big ones at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny. The versatility that you just outlined with the baby Z2, I can't say that I fished it on a Ned. You know what I mean? I've watched your content before. So for folks at home, if we're making a checklist, right? Top dead center. There is no top dead center. That's a goofy statement. But one of the hooks. So a TK 150, TK 150 VP. If you're Pro V, run the Pro V. If you're old school, be old school. You're going to catch them. A 180, multiple applications, right? You can put as a Bubba shot or weightless, which my mind just went like that. And then of course on a Ned rig. So we're at 4 right now, and we're not even talking. Now you added jighead minnow, so a baby Z2. I mean, Z through your stuff, we know it's an amazing bait. But folks, one of the things with hook work, the goal, right, is to help you catch more and bigger fish. A bait is only as good as the hook you're using, because that's the thing that seals the deal. That's the connecting point between you and all your hard work. Z's put into work. He's giving you the hooks you need. If you can give somebody one takeaway with pairing Trocar with a baby Z2, what would it be?
And it's interesting that we're talking about this. Is the reason I have this rigged with a TK 180 right now. I do not. A lot of my friends, when they're drop shotting, they rig their baby Z2s like this. I don't the majority of the year. If there's one thing to take away from this, okay? One thing to take away from it. Throughout an entire season, I will rig it just nose hooked with a 150 VP. Either a 2 or down to a 4, but predominantly 80% of the time I'm using a 2, and I'm just going to nose hook it. When they are spawning, which is right now, this time of year generally, whether they're just starting, they're just getting done, I'll always go to that 180, whether that fish has been caught, but a lot of, whether they're smallmouth or largemouth, they're tail grabbers, they snap, and they're going to get that hook when it's threaded. After spawning season, I instantly go back to a 150 VP. The only thing I'll tell you that I'll go back to is when I see schooling fish, busting fish, or cruising fish that are real. And here's what I mean. A lot of the viewers of this, and Eric, you know this too, when you've got a dead calm day, okay, you got a dead calm day, and you see them cruising, whether they're cruising in clear water in 20 feet of water or they're in 2 feet of water, that dude right there, okay, that dude right there on that 180 on light line to where you can reach out and touch somebody weightless is one of the best fidgety bass techniques. I've actually not shot a show on that yet, but it's you. And here's the situation I mean. When you go back to cast and you're looking at one, and right when you cock the gun and you're going to make that cast and he goes 100 miles an hour, that's when that technique is at the best. So if you see them cruising, rig that baby Z2 definitely on a 180 this year, thread it on there. You will catch a lot of those fish that you're seeing that generally are going 100 miles an hour away from you.
Guys, you hit it. You heard it here first on Hook Work. Z dropping juice like we're used to. Appreciate it a ton, Z. We'll talk to you again soon.
See you, bud.